Hi, friends. This is Will Parker, host of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast, along with my co-host, Dr. Jen Schwanke, for another Monday Matters as we step into June. Wow, Jen. Most of our friends in the U.S. schools are wrapping up finally. Not everybody. I know sometimes folks go to the end of this month if they're especially that far northeast group of my school friends. But I've talked to a lot of people recently that are finished and on vacation. And you, by the time this recording comes out, you're going to be you have done the ASCD conference by now or not?
No, when this comes out, we will still be about 2 weeks away.
Okay.
My math is rusty.
Yeah, tell people where they can find you, because you're going to be all over the place.
I'm going to be all over the place. I put this on LinkedIn and I posted, everyone, you're going to get sick of me because I am. So anyone going to the ITSE ASCD conference, it's co-located this year, and Monday morning, 10 a.m., I'll be moderating a panel for instructional leaders. Monday at 1, I'll be doing a learning stage. Monday at 1:30, I'll be signing books. And then at 2:30, I go into my first session, and that session's titled Being a Magician, Principal Impact on Teacher Morale. Monday at 4, I'm going to be a panelist for a conversation about women in leadership. And then Tuesday morning at 10:30, I will do my second session, which is conflict management for school leaders. So I'll be around, and I really hope that some of our listeners will come up and say hi. I'd love to meet.
Oh my gosh, no excuses. If you're at the ASCD SD conference and you do not find Jen Schwanke, then I'm so sad because there's so many opportunities, Jen. It's funny because that same morning, June 16th, will be my very last mastermind session for one of the mini groups I've been leading this year. But that's the last calendared event I have for 24-25. And so, and then I begin my summer break. And so I purposefully try to schedule my consulting work around school calendars. And so, man, I'm getting excited. We're going to take a little trip out to Colorado to do some climbing, Jack and I, but you and your family are getting ready to do something exciting too.
Right. The day that this episode comes out, I will be back in port. We're going on an Alaskan trip, and this is so self-serving. I've always wanted to go to Alaska, but my son graduated this year, and we told him, no present, but we'll take you on a trip. And he suggested Yellowstone, and I said, that's a terrible idea. We need to go to Alaska. And he was like, oh, okay. So that's what we're doing. So I get what I want.
Oh, well, one of my favorite parts about summer, and especially when you can finally unplug from all the work, get away from the email, take a break from the social media, just be with family, or even just be with your own mind again,
Right.
is there always comes a time in summer, Jen, where I just take time to reflect, where I'm just being able to take a look back and take a look forward. And now that I get to do this kind of work, I can schedule reflection times throughout the year, but summer is always a really good reflection time. I don't know. What is it like for you? Do you take time to reflect in the summer?
Well, I do. And I think when I think about our listeners and so many principals who, our jobs are so reactive, we have to deal with what it is that's given to us on any given day. And so in summer, when it slows down, I think your idea of scheduling time to think is really powerful, because I think many of our listeners at first they'd be like, well, wait, what do I think about? Because I just react usually. So I think the answer there is to be, I love the phrase, I think I made it up. It's called proactive reflection. So you are reflecting about things that are coming and how you can better handle them. And then there's also the reactive reflection where you think, what happened this year? What could we have done differently? I'm on this kind of a rampage right now that principals are too hard on themselves. And so I don't think that reflection should necessarily be what did I do wrong and what could I do better, but it could be what could I do differently? What did I do really, really well? And how can I apply those to some other situations, that kind of thing. So I hope our listeners do take some time and reflect. Now, the other thing that I love about summer, Will, I feel like I get back in touch with a lot of my local colleagues. My family was making fun of me because I went to breakfast 3 times this week with a different professional friend, and there's time to meet and then talk. I don't have to rush back for a 9 o'clock meeting. We can linger over another cup of coffee and just say, how was your year and how are things going? And hey, tell me about that situation you referenced the last time we were together. So it's a time to connect with colleagues too.
Oh, yeah. Just next week, I've got one on Monday because I had a friend reach out and let's connect. And I was like, wait, you're local.
Right. Right.
We're gonna have lunch together. We're not gonna.
Right. We
Yeah, that.
should. We should. And, my family's like, how many orders of avocado toast do you actually need to have during the summer? And I'm like, well, there's how many days are there? Because that's how much avocado toast I need.
Oh, I love that. Reflecting together is so powerful because, oh man, I'm trying to remember who I'm going to be referencing in this conversation, and I won't remember off the top of my head. Um, Actually, I do. It was a book by David Brooks that I'm reading. My kids are so amazing, Jen, that they suggested that Emily, who edits the show, about a year ago said, "Hey, why don't we do a family book study?" And so we started picking some books, and we're reading a book by David Brooks called "How to Know a Person." And in one of the chapters, he's talking about the kind of this misconception that we have that introspection is the most powerful form of reflection. And he was saying nothing against introspection. The research shows that it really is important for us to reflect on our experiences and what we can do better. But where the most powerful change comes in reflection is when you do it with someone else.
Mm.
And so reflecting, so getting across from a friend, taking somebody to breakfast or lunch, or jumping on a Zoom like this if you're long distance, but just reflecting with someone else can be so powerful too.
It can. And you know what I find myself doing is there's these topics or issues or concerns that I have. And then when I throw it out there to a colleague, a professional friend, I find myself sometimes saying, but it's fine. It's fine. And that isn't me diminishing it. It's me realizing that when I throw it out there to conversation, it's not nearly as big of a deal as I had made it in my own head.
Hmm.
Or, I'll tell a story and then I'll say, but we'll work through it. And I basically talk myself into having the faith that we will work through it. It will be fine. I have one of my biggest professional weaknesses is I can make a small challenge into a behemoth in my own head, and it's not. And so having those people just to be the listening ear can kind of get you where you need to be mentally to deal with it.
Well, one of the reasons that reflection's on my mind is because on these Monday Matters, we've been talking through some of the content from my new book, Whose Permission Are You Waiting For? An Educator's Guide to Doing What You Love. And I have a chapter on the cycles of reflection for lifelong learning and growth. And Jen, I don't share this because they're good ideas. I share them because they become these patterns for me of just figuring out, okay, and I've quoted Pete Hall so many times on this show. He's going to get tired of me repeating him, but I'm just going to say it out loud again. That Pete once said in a training of his I was sitting in, and Pete's a great author with ASCD as well, and he said, experience really isn't the best teacher. It's reflecting on your experience that's the best teacher. And so, with that thought in mind, I just wanted to kind of sit on this for a moment, Jen, and say a couple of things out loud to listeners. One is all of us know that in the cycle of learning that we see in a really great classroom, that every student goes through 4 stages. The first, it's the unaware stage that everybody begins in, the inability to even understand what you don't know, but then becoming stage 2 conscious of something that you suddenly realize that requires some kind of change, and then an action stage, which is stage 3, which is now I have new information. I'm going to try something new that I didn't know before and apply this. But then it's that refinement stage is stage 4, which is now I'm going to reflect on what worked and then repeat the best parts of it and discard the parts that didn't. And that little cycle of learning is it's what keeps us curious. It's what keeps us relevant. It's what keeps us engaged in learning ourselves. And if we're not taking the time to take a step back and just reflect and ask ourselves, what have I been learning and what are some things I would do differently moving forward, then I think we may be missing out on a chance for growth.
Right.
That's why I think one of the reasons I think reflection is so powerful.
Well, and it's good that we're talking about this today for all the reasons that we mentioned earlier. This is such a fast-paced job that our listeners have. It's so fast, and you never know when you walk into your office what the day's going to bring. And some days, I remember saying as a principal to my assistant, I would say, I don't think it would be physically or emotionally possible for me to have to work any harder. Like it is so fast. I am working as fast as I can. I couldn't possibly add one more thing to my mind or my calendar if I tried. And so when things are that fast and when days are so full, it's easy to just get in that mindset where, well, I'll reflect as I go. But reflecting as you go is more just, again, developing a reaction in the moment. It's not being thoughtful about what it all means.
Yeah. Okay, so let me give a challenge to listeners, and because maybe since it's summer, you can find someone to get on the other side of, a friend or a colleague. Maybe a quick lunch or a breakfast or a dinner or a walk together, or if they're long distance, a Zoom or a video call. And here's some questions to think about asking them. And if you're like me, you can't hide things. I always am so obvious, like I'm going to try this on you, but you
Right.
could also try this without being so obvious about it. But here's some questions to keep in your back pocket, to think about. Question one: what are some of the biggest milestones you experienced this past year? That's a really great place to start. I mean, maybe you had a child graduate, or maybe you got a new promotion, or maybe you got a new book published, or maybe you had a certain number of kids achieve that didn't achieve before. But there's always, sometimes you forget the milestones until you take a chance to ask the question. Question two: what's something you were really happy to celebrate from this past year? Because celebration automatically leads back to reflection. Like, oh wow, I forgot that this was so worth it. Question three, and this is where things I think get really, you have to be really honest. What were some of the most difficult challenges you faced as you walked through? Because there's always so many, so many. And then question four, what would you say were the lessons you learned along the way? How would you, what lessons did you say all those things taught you? I don't know, Jen, would you add anything to that?
No, as you mentioned each one, I was thinking about some tricks or tips that
Mhm.
principals might use. So I have been asked that before, at
Yeah.
year-end retreats or team meetings or whatever. And one tool that I find helpful is to literally go back in your calendar.
Mhm.
Because again, this job is so fast paced. Sometimes we forget in
Mhm.
June what we were dealing with in October and November. That doesn't mean it's not still in our brain somewhere, but we need that trigger. So I have before, in order to answer those questions, milestone, celebration, challenge, lesson, I've had to force myself to go back, look at my staff newsletters, look at my calendar, look at emails. You can just go back and say, what was I emailing about in November?
Yeah.
And that will create um, more of an echo chamber of memory that you need
Mhm.
in order to say, well, what did I get out of that? I remember a conversation I had with a parent. This has probably been 5 years ago. And there was a parent, and the family was going through all kinds of upheaval. I think it was like the third marriage for mom, maybe the fourth marriage for dad. The kids were angry, big fat mess. And I had to work through it. And in working with mom, who was so mad at dad, I responded to her, and I remember her being very, very angry. And I spent the rest of the year thinking how nasty she was. Well, when I looked back, I forced myself to look back, and I was like, oh gosh, remember that issue with the Joneses, I'll say.
Mhm.
And then I pulled up some emails and I thought, wow, no wonder she was angry at me because I was condescending.
Mhm.
I did not respond well to her. I came to the conversation not from a place of curiosity, but a place of judgment.
Mhm.
And taking that time to not only remember the incident, but look back at evidence and think about what I could do differently was really powerful, because here I am 5 years later remembering something that I hadn't been remembering 5 months after it happened, if that makes sense.
No, that completely makes sense.
Right. So I think you have to dig in and give yourself that time. It's not just as simple as what's a milestone? Oh, okay, well, we had a really good, prom this year. It's look back and see what led up to a milestone, a celebration, a challenge, and
Yeah.
then you'll find the lesson learned.
Yeah. You talked about this distinction at the beginning of this conversation, the difference between reactive reflection and proactive reflection. And so one of the things I like to suggest that you do after looking back like that is exactly what you said. Okay, now how will this change the way I look forward? So
Right.
as I look forward, what are some of the things that I might want to be working on and it could be habits, it could be relationship building, it could be stronger communication, it could be your own health. There's a long list of places where we could all grow in terms
Right.
of our growth. But um, in this may be where I kind of geek out a little bit, Jen, in the chapter on this, because I just encourage leaders to think about how would you look forward in terms of your daily goals and habits, your weekly goals and habits, your monthly, your yearly, because there are different places we can put benchmarks on our so not just looking at the calendar from the past, but also planning in advance some of the things that you may
Right.
want to be working on or experiencing or moving toward as you reflect
Right.
forward, because I think that's where the power comes, is like,
Right.
how's this going to change the way I behave in the future?
Right. And it's a good time, that proactive reflection time is a really good time to address problems that always just seem to be there no matter what. At one of my avocado toast breakfasts this week, a friend of mine was saying, I really want to rethink my staff, how my staff comes together. We have bagels every Friday, but it's just stale and nobody really cares. And everybody grabs their bagel and goes back to their office or their classroom. I want to do something differently. And I said, well, let's think about that. You've talked about these boring bagel breakfasts now for a couple of years. What if you really mix it up and you just do something once every month and it's a potluck or whatever, change it up, but think about why it's stale and what value does it bring to your staff morale? If you say none, then okay, it's just a bagel. But if you say, well, I want it to bring people together and I want to be able to have people connect on a more personal level, not about data, not about students, not about outcomes, whatever. How do I achieve that goal and solve this problem that will not go away?
Jen, I'm just laughing because I'm already picturing in my head, and maybe somebody out there listening is creative enough that you could like create the image for a t-shirt that says Avocado Toast Breakfast Club.
Right.
Because I'm like, this could be the thing, you could
Uh,
Jen's Avocado Toast Breakfast Club, but you could start hosting your own. You could,
yeah.
and let's bring it full circle. I know there's going to be some folks that get to see you at ASCD and ISTE in June. In July, both of us are going to be out in Seattle for the NASSP ESP United Conference, and so if you're going to be at either one of those, please reach out to Jen or me because we would love to connect with you. And I'll be at the July one, not the June one, but Jen will be at both because who knows, maybe we'll have an opportunity for some avocado toast and
Right.
some reflection.
I bet we could find a place that sells avocado toast with a couple of basted eggs on top. We could totally do that.
Well, as we wrap up, I just want to encourage anyone who's listening today, especially if you're stepping into your summer break, to just first of all give yourself permission to unplug from the craziness, be yourself, enjoy just being present, being in your own mind, being with the people you love, doing things that are relaxing, and because you deserve that kind of rest. And then as you have an opportunity to reflect and think back, don't make it a chore, make it a joyful experience, and being able to use that reflective cycle to be the good student to yourself. Just like you're creating wonderful learning environments for your students, make sure that you're staying a learner too. But Jen, as we wrap up, how can listeners stay connected with you as they step into this week?
Yes. Find me at jenschwanke.com. Drop me an email. Find me on LinkedIn and let's connect.
And you can always find this podcast and all the other resources available through the work that we do also at my website at williamdparker.com. And until next time, thank you guys for doing what matters. We'll talk to you soon.